Okay, so it should be working. We should be live.
Okay. Hey. I don't see you yet. Okay. Unless.
Just start setting everything up.
Okay. I'll ignore random candor. Yeah, I'll ignore him.
All right. Hold on a second, guys. I'm just sending the links around and doing stuff. We will start the stream soon.
Okay.
We don't have any viewers yet anyway, so it's fine.
Yeah, that's okay though. As soon as I see your screen, I'll go share it on my Twitter and pin the tweet with hashtags, of course. I know it doesn't get out much, but better than nothing.
We seem to have one viewer right now.
Oh, okay. Nice. Hey, you. Oh, you must be in private right now, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm public. We have one viewer.
Oh, you.
I don't know.
Okay.
All right, spread the message around enough. We'll see. We'll probably get more people on as time goes.
Sure.
All right, so to start off the stream, I am MakoHorrorShow, and I am here with
Randy the Wild Horse.
And today we are going to be talking about autism awareness. And you guys might be wondering why I picked Randy the Wild Horse to be on this stream and why this stream is happening right now. So I decided to have Randy on as a guest because I think that he, as an older person with many people in his life that he's met and a lot of experiences that he's had in his personal life, if he's comfortable talking about those things, might actually have some pretty interesting things to say about how people on the autism spectrum have been treated throughout history, in recent history. And I think that he might have some interesting things to say about some of his personal experiences. And so the reason...
I don't see the video on at all.
You can't see me?
Weird. No. It's weird.
Jimmy, can you see us? So Jimmy's here. Okay, so it's just my video. But you can hear Randy, right, talking?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I don't know if he can.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Oh,
So the reason why this stream is happening this weekend, and I have to walk a very fine line with how I'm going to talk about this very important topic today on this stream, because I don't want to see this channel.
yeah. Now I see you.
You can see me?
Oh God. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oops. Okay. I'll turn the sound down. Okay. I apologize. My fault.
No, it's okay. We
My
were
fault.
saying technology is challenging, so
Yeah. Okay.
it's not that you're technologically challenged, it's that technology is challenging.
No, very, yes. Okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah, see, um, yeah, boy, my brain is getting fucking stupid. Oh, excuse my swearing.
It's okay. We do that
Okay.
a lot here. But I was going to say there is a very important anniversary coming up on this Tuesday, and it's the anniversary of a tragic event that impacted my life in an indirect way, but a very powerful way. And it was during a very significant period of my life. So just to recap, to give a bit of context, my video on this topic, the watch listed that I did, was taken down by YouTube. I don't have a strike on my channel for it, but it was taken down by YouTube for being supportive of violent criminal organizations. And I know that people know that this is not true, but YouTube, and given the current context of how small my channel is, I don't think that it's worth it to really try and fight it right now. And I don't want to get myself into more trouble by drawing attention to the channel by trying to challenge YouTube on that. So I think I'm going to let it be. And when I get the chance, I'm probably going to re-upload that watch listed somewhere else online for the time being. But in that video, I wanted to kind of recap on some of the things that I said in that video to give context. I know people who watch this channel already know a little bit about my history and my background, and people who've listened to my depression chamber stories, of course, know a lot about my history and background. But the reason why the tragic event that occurred on May 23rd, 2014, impacted my life was because I am a person who is on the autism spectrum and has had to struggle with some extremely painful traumas and experiences in my life in relation to that. And I went to a special education high school where I was able to transform as a person in a very positive way. And when I was in my senior year of high school in 2014, I was doing a project on autism awareness with the Girl Scouts of Long Island. And being able to receive kindness and help from people at the special education high school that I went to, as well as having the opportunity to do a project on autism awareness with the Girl Scouts, gave me so much healing and was able to provide me with so many opportunities to turn my tragedy into triumph and into something good. And at the time in 2014, when this event happened in May in my senior year, I was in a position where I felt as though my life had turned around, and I felt as though I was a person who was able to achieve things that I never thought were possible. And I felt so grateful and so happy for the people that had helped me in my life. And I felt as though I was headed on a healthier path than I was. And I remember when my English teacher told me that there was a tragedy in Isla Vista, California that was perpetrated by a man on the autism spectrum. The first emotion that I felt when I heard about this was a very deep, ominous sensation of knowing, where I knew exactly why he did this, and it did not need to be explained to me. This was before I had even learned about the manifesto or the autobiography's existence. This was before I even knew really what his name was or anything about his background. I just heard the context of the situation on that base level, and I knew exactly what happened. I knew that he was a person who had suffered immensely and was a person who had had an emotional crisis about himself, his position in the world, and his value as a human being, given the context of being on the autism spectrum. And it was so painful and so terrifying for me because I knew that this event was going to have a ripple effect and that this event was going to lead to more and more tragedies throughout the United States. I knew that this was the start of something massive before I even knew the full context of the situation. I knew exactly where this was headed and what this was going to mean. And it pains me to say that over the course of almost the past decade, it's about 9 years right now. Next year, it will be a full decade, that things have traveled down the dark path that I knew that they were going to travel down to a T. And basically, exactly what I believed and expected was going to happen has happened, which is that society hasn't learned from the experience when it comes to treating people on the autism spectrum with empathy and providing people with services, not even necessarily government services. I'm talking about social, interpersonal services that take place between us as people every single day. That these changes haven't happened, and that this person's dark intentions and goal of creating and cultivating a subculture based around this that perpetrates and perpetuates violence and problems in our society, all of these things have happened. And that as time goes on, it weighs on me and pushes me more and more into the direction of knowing deep within myself that this is something that I have to talk about, even if it means sacrificing a lot of respect that people have for me, even if it means putting myself in a position in which this is going to damage my reputation, at least on a surface level, for people who can't understand it. Because the goal of trying to help people in this position and trying to stop this is so important to me. And the value of doing that is more important than whatever mockery that I will take for talking about this. So that was a very deep explanation for something that I wanted to talk about. That was a little bit long, so I'm sorry, Randy, for making you sit through all of that,
Oh
but I
no,
had
no,
to.
you're no, you're fine. You're fine, Angel. You just spoke great. Yeah, yeah, a lot of those group homes out there, they're just like not very good with the clients. It's just I know my brother. He basically wasn't happy over there. I wish I would have taken care of him. I always dreamed of winning the lottery so I could take him with me, but that never happened, unfortunately. So, yeah, yeah, it's just that when my brother was living with my parents, you see, my parents would never hook up the TV for him or turn on his favorite television shows to watch. See, when I was home with my parents, my little brother, I watched TV with him and stuff. But then when I left, then he got mad and tore the telephone off and just breaking things. And then fortunately, my brother got sent to the group home. And he stayed there for, oh God, let's see, two, oh God, let's see, 15, almost 30 years, the poor guy.
So what Randy is talking about, and part of the reason why I felt comfortable bringing him on this show, if Randy, if you just wanted to give a little bit of backstory as to what it is that you're talking about, I'd like it if you could talk a little bit about experiences with your brother and how this kind of thing has impacted your life, and talk about maybe some of the things and some of the issues that you saw as a person living years ago dealing with this.
Oh, yeah. like I said, as far as my brother's concerned, that was like back when. By the way, hello there, old school Dave. Hello, Hysonanis. And okay, I said that. Okay, now back to the subject. Well, like I said, back when before my brother was born, my mother was doing laundry one day, going down the stairs of an old house on 20. It's in A Street by Oxford College. Anyway, she tumbled down the stairs while doing laundry. Kind of landed on her stomach a couple of times too, because those stairways are like very narrow. And yeah, it damaged his brain. And when he became born, he couldn't walk until he was like 3 or 4. He had to wear like diapers for the longest time. He could never like totally use the bathroom or anything. He needed help wiping himself in certain areas. I don't want to talk about this. YouTube will probably flag us for that, you know. So anyway, yeah, as time went by, I used to watch TV with him. He always liked when I watched TV because I'd watch all the cartoons with him. I watch everything except Sesame Street. I have to walk away from that, of course. Electric Company, I could handle it. But yeah, when he went to school, unlike myself, when I went to Madison, I could talk about how those teachers treated me like crap. My brother, he can't really talk about it because he only said like one word sentences, you know? Yeah. I'm just not very good at explaining things, Angel. Like I said, I was on Thorazine for like, I don't know, 3.5, 4 years. And I was very high on it. I have a YouTube video on it back in the 1970s. Did you ever see that one, Angel?
No, I have to see it though.
Well, anyway, I know some of them have, yeah. Well, anyway, I was very high when I was walking by my late uncle's car. See, when I was on Thorazine, it was like a reverse of LSD. You know, you listen to, say, a motor of a factory, you can listen to that for hours. You can stare at scenery just for hours. Like it's like you want to go on to go someplace else all the time. Yeah, it's like that. It's so weird, you know, for me being high like that. And of course, my brother was taking medications. He couldn't tell you if he was high or not. Poor guy. At least I could. I mean, well.
But just to give some more context to what Randy is kind of talking about and some of his experiences. So, Randy, do you mind telling me how old are you exactly again?
I'm 58 years old. I was born way back in 1964, and I have a YouTube video when I was like 6 months old in color, like me as a baby anyway. But yeah, things were different back then than they were now. Yeah.
So, what Randy is talking about is his experiences growing up with a little brother who had developmental disabilities. And I always think that it's very interesting to hear these kinds of experiences and backstory because I think that it gives context to how certain things have manifested now. And a lot of the progress that we've made has been really excellent and great. And I do think that people have a sense of empathy. I don't mean to say that the world is entirely cold and unfeeling in relation to these things. But I think that it's important to recognize and understand that there are still issues that take place in the way that we manage these things as a society. And I think that in particular, the situation that we see now is that I think that there's been a lot of progress made when it comes to dealing with people who have, I suppose, more observable or more obvious disabilities that are easy for a person to see. But the issue that I have experienced, and I think that a lot of people in my situation would agree on, is that it's a particularly uniquely challenging and painful thing to be a person who is on the mild end. And the way that I like to kind of explain it and describe it to people, if people are familiar with what the uncanny valley is, the uncanny valley is a concept that human beings are creeped out and afraid of things that visually appear very close to human, but not entirely completely human. So things like if you were to see like an edited picture of a face in which the eyes are, let's say, whited out or things like that. So it's basically it's the concept that we are most unnerved and most disturbed by things that are very close to being something that we understand, but that we can't understand entirely. It's easier to deal with things that are more obvious and more direct. And the way that I would explain it is that being on the high functioning end of the autism spectrum is like being in a social uncanny valley in which you are not disabled enough that people feel the obligation to be empathetic or to be kind to you for the sake of being a good person, but you also don't pass as being entirely equipped and entirely integrated socially. So where that leaves you is in a position in which people do not have the emotional obligation or this general societal obligation to be nice to you and to be empathetic towards you, but they also don't have the instinct to fully accept you as a person. And it puts you in a position where people can sense and identify and know that there is something wrong with you, so to speak, that there's something that distinguishes you from themselves. And they can't fully identify and put their finger on what that is. And the emotional response to that is usually anger and discouragement and mockery because they want to keep their distance from you because they can't process or understand this instinctual, this intuitive sense that they have that there is something different about you. So it's a challenge where you have a situation in which people have this expectation inside their mind, or they have this set idea of what it means to be a person who is disabled or who struggles with these things, and how being on the high functioning end of the spectrum kind of challenges that and puts you in kind of a gray area in which people don't exactly know how to process something like that. They are unforgiving of you is what I'll say. People are very unforgiving of people on the high functioning end of the spectrum because they view them as being equipped enough that they think that they should be able to pick up on or process certain things that maybe their disorder prevents them from fully understanding. But the people who are looking at this person, they see someone who they think appears normal. And so they apply those standards to them and don't necessarily give them that empathy or that patience about that issue, which I think is what happened a lot with our friend, who, according to our friend, I'm saying our friend is the person who committed the tragedy on May 23rd, 2014. I think part of the issue was that he apparently never received a fully confirmed diagnosis, likely due to the fact that he was able to communicate relatively in a functional way. He was able to function relatively well. And I think that given that fact, he was unable to develop a better understanding and introspective understanding of himself, and also wasn't able to receive some of the treatment that he was supposed to receive, or receive maybe some of the education. His parents didn't educate themselves, different issues like that. But Randy, I wanted you were telling me a little bit earlier when we were talking before I started the show, you were talking about some of the things that you observed your brother dealing with, like some of the bullying and some of the things that you would see. If you're comfortable talking about that on here, it would be interesting to hear some of that from you.
Oh yeah, they'd like mimic his talk and moving his arms. They're like, stuff like that. Yeah, we mostly my mother mostly like kept him in the house and have us turn on TV with him, or we'd give him like rides in the car and like go someplace else where it's like more private, or have him like meet the right people who treat him good. That's what we usually did. Yeah, and I guess my dad, like moving out in the country, probably helped him a little bit, so he didn't have to deal with like mean people around him. But me, yeah, of course, I was diagnosed with ADHD myself, and anyway, yeah, okay. I'm trying to explain that. I'm trying. Dang it. Okay. Yeah. Oh shoot. Yeah. Yeah. I really like miss Kenny. He used to like when you pull him on the wagon from time to time. Yeah. He could like never ride a bicycle or anything like that. Like I could, and yeah, he could put together puzzles as long as they're big. The smaller puzzles, he has like a harder time, and yeah, yeah, poor guy, man. Just yeah, I used to. Yeah, one time I even let him drive my car. I had the Oldsmobile 88, Delta 88. I let him drive around the Cub parking lot. He didn't know how to use the gas pedal, and I had him step on. He stepped on a little too hard. I was like, that was before security cameras came around, of course. Because back in the early '80s, they didn't have the cameras like they do now. That's for sure. Yeah, I wish I could explain things better. Doggone it.
No, it's okay. I think the thing that I appreciated about a lot of the things that you were telling me earlier and a lot of the things that you were talking about now was I appreciated how empathetic and how compassionate you were to Kenny, and I appreciate
Yeah,
the fact that you would spend so much time with him and that you were considerate
yeah,
of the things that made him happy and that you wanted to
right.
protect him. That's something that means a lot to me.
Yeah, it's. Oh yes, yeah, you did like that. The that fake stuff, that professional wrestling. Of course, he thought that was real, but of course we know that isn't. Yeah, he called Dick Bockwinkel Bach, Greg Gagne Geg. I'm not no fan of Greg Gagne, but that's beside the point. But anyway, yeah, we laugh at that phony wrestling, and he, he one time I had him play I still have my Nintendo game, by the way, that one from back in the '80s. I had him play Mike Tyson's Punch Out. He actually beat Glass Joe once. It was weird. Yeah, I can myself. I can get up to Mike Tyson. I can beat him by decision. I think I did once or twice, but okay. But anyway, yeah, yeah. It's oh boy. Yeah, sometimes he'd wander around. He'd wander pretty far, and then my mother'd catch him. And my mother was from the old school. She did spankings and stuff. And with my father too. Of course, my father he used the belt instead. He used it on Kenny the least, of course, because Kenny couldn't speak his mind like we kind of could. So. And my father, when he got really mad, oh boy, yeah. Anyway, yeah, he basically got to travel with my folks and my uncle. Yeah, he's in some of the YouTube videos, of course. When he was in the car, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Yeah, I'm changing it where I'm unediting it. I don't know why your relatives wanted me to edit him out when he was alive. I mean, I don't know why, but but I have to do it, of course. Otherwise, my relatives will complain to no end. And I just can't. But anyway, okay.
So
He likes to ride. Yeah, what? I'm sorry.
old school Dave wants to know who was Kenny's favorite wrestler.
Oh yeah, he liked Nick Bockwinkel. He liked Greg Gagne. He liked Demolition of the WWF because he acted strange. Of course. Yeah, and yeah, he usually like the goofiest wrestlers, and of course, as we know, back then they used to like pay wrestlers the most, but as time goes by, they don't get paid nearly as much as they used to. That's why the acting is terrible now. So, but back to Kenny. He used to love wrestling, and sometimes he'd like what other shows did he like? Oh my goodness. I should have wrote things down before the show, doggone it. Yeah, that was. Yeah, but so the older I get, the more I forget. Yeah, seems like it.
Well, if you wanted, I could
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I could read the article that I have. I do have an article here, a short article that I was going to read that I'm going to link back to some of the things that Randy was just saying in a second. So I think I'm going to start reading that article right now. So this is an article from Psychology Today, and it says, "The link between autism and violence isn't autism." And this is by David Retinue of the ABCs of Child Psychiatry. Some very disturbing shootings involving individuals who reportedly had been diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder. I already have to redo it. After some very disturbing shootings involving individuals who reportedly had been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, there has been increased attention to the possible link between autism and violence. As much as people wanted to push back on this possible association immediately, there were some aspects of autism that at least made such a link theoretically feasible. After all, many individuals with autism do find it difficult to empathize emotionally with other people, and some also suffer with aggressive outbursts. Missing in these discussions, however, has been good solid data on the issue, which is why this recent study published in an online journal of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychology. I'm not good at reading things out loud, I must warn you guys. Journal of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry offers some much needed information. The Stockholm Youth Cohort Study examined medical and legal records on all children born in Stockholm County. This enabled them to analyze the official registries of nearly 300,000 individuals between the ages of 15 and 27. These registries record psychiatric diagnoses that are made of residents while convictions of violent crimes are listed on a different database. The Swedish National Crime Registry. Many other variables were also taken into account for this study, including sex, age, and the presence of other psychiatric disorders, crime history of parents, and family income, among others. The pattern of these results they found nicely illustrate both, one, why people might think a link between autism and violence exists, and two, why this conclusion is ultimately much more complicated. In terms of raw numbers, a total of 4.4% of individuals with autism had been convicted of a violent crime versus 2.6% of individuals without autism. Analyzing this in a more statistically comprehensive way, the authors of the study found that there continued to be about a 40% increased risk between autism and conviction for a violent crime, after mathematically accounting for things such as age, sex, and some parental factors. Furthermore, this increased risk appeared stronger among individuals who had autism but who did not meet criteria for an intellectual disability. However, when the researchers also took into account other psychiatric disorders the individuals had, in particular ADHD and conduct disorder, the association with autism faded away and became statistically non-significant. Indeed, the presence of autism among individuals diagnosed with ADHD or conduct disorder tended to reduce the risk of violent crime. Yes, I know some people don't count autism as a psychiatric disorder, but that is another story you can read about here. The authors concluded that what appeared to be a link between autism and violent crime is actually explained by other psychiatric disorders, including ADHD and conduct disorder. For those unfamiliar with the diagnosis, conduct disorder is a psychiatric disorder that describes people who tend to frequently break rules and violate the rights of others. In many ways, it is a diagnosis that explicitly describes criminal behavior. At the risk of getting a little technical, it is a bit statistically funky to include essentially criminal behavior as an independent predictor of other violent criminal behavior. But the fact that co-occurring ADHD also diminishes the link between autism and violence lends some additional credence that is not autism per se that it is not autism per se that is driving the association with violent crime. About 25% of the autism group also met criteria for ADHD, while only about 4% met criteria for conduct disorder. The bottom line is for this study was that it does not appear that autism is in its own a risk factor for becoming violent against other people. This news will likely be highly welcomed by the autism advocacy community, which has maintained this view all along and now has some good data to support it. However, the study could raise some concerns among other mental health advocacy groups that are already concerned about the stigma associated with the perception that psychiatric disorders are associated with an increased propensity towards violence. Here, it might be useful to pull back from the fancy statistical analysis and keep in mind that 96% of individuals with an autism diagnosis were not convicted of any violent offenses. So the reason why I was bringing this up was because it's an article that talks a lot about comorbid mental illnesses, but it also talks a lot about it talks a lot about what it means that the diagnosis of autism is not the specific thing that is linking these two things together with each other. And I think the article focuses a little bit too much on comorbidities. But one of the things that it talks about is he's talking about I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this to you. Hold on. He's talking about the association with autism and let me see if I can find it again in there. What was it specifically? Oh, this is the part where it says, furthermore, this increased risk appeared to be stronger among individuals who had autism, but did not meet the criteria for an intellectual disability. So that was the part that I found the most interesting when he talks about the link between autism and violence. And it appears that people who are more severe on the spectrum, and this ties into what I was saying at the very beginning, people who are more severe on the spectrum are less likely, I think, to commit violent crimes. And the reason for that is because I think that people who are on the I guess the more severe end of the spectrum don't have the same kind of social experiences as someone who is on the less severe end of the spectrum do. It's because of the way that we approach and handle the distinguishment between those two things and what it means to be someone who is more severe and how people tend to socially interpret that and handle that. So, the way that this ties into what Randy was talking about earlier is the thing that can help to prevent this is not it's not so much in the psychiatric aspect of that. I know I talk about what it means to get psychiatric help. It comes on it comes from an interpersonal level. It comes from having a mentality similar to what Randy had with his brother. It comes from being empathetic and being willing to put yourself in a situation where you are perhaps a little bit uncomfortable and opening yourself up to being able to empathize with someone who you don't view yourself as being capable of communicating with and learning how to understand these things and how to be able to see the humanness in other people. And the thing that I found interesting in what Randy was talking about was he talks a lot about his brother's personality and the different activities that he would do with him. And these are things that you would do with any kind of person. And what it is I think that people, part of the dehumanization of people on the autism spectrum is they have a very concrete set idea of what it means to socially interact with people like that. And what Randy is showing us, and what Randy is talking about, is he's talking about how he used to incorporate and include his brother in everyday activities. He used to do things with him, like drive with him, watch wrestling with him, and he allowed him and welcomed him into his life and extended his experiences into his life. He was able to build that relationship with him and include him in activities that maybe other people wouldn't think to include him in. Was there anything that you wanted to say about that, Randy?
So, oh yeah, oh yeah. I just I thought, oh yeah, they, yeah. Well, Kenny and I usually do things together mostly alone, and like with our mother. See, most of the people like I used to know in my past life, especially in my teenage years, I used to get like drunk or stoned like pretty often. So that's totally separate from my brother. So okay, but when okay, oh, oh boy, my memory's going away. Maybe I'm getting Alzheimer's disease like my brother. Hope not. But anyway, um, oh God, yeah, yeah, let's say is. Yeah, as he got older, he just loved to ride in the vehicle. You had to give him at least a 200-mile ride, or he gets mad. He prefers you drive him day and night. He had it his way, and of course, when he eats stuff, he always loves the sweet foods. And after a while, he didn't like to brush his teeth though. He'd stroke the toothbrush like 2-3 times and put it down and thinking he's done, and then after a while they had to like pull all his teeth out because they got rotten, which is sad. So I know how it feels losing a lot of teeth, anyway. And yeah, and let's see. Uh, even my own memory's going away. Oh, come on, think. Hey, am I doing okay there, Chatters? Please tell me.
No, I think
Please tell
you're
me,
doing
Chatters.
good. The thing that I wanted to capture when I had you on here was your empathy and your compassion that you
Oh,
showed
yeah,
him.
true.
And that was something that I thought was so special. And I guess I mean, to be fair, like I didn't probably plan as well for this stream as I maybe should have. But I guess
But okay.
Hmm?
Now I do have a thought though, is unlike myself, where I had my arms twisted in a cop hold, and plus not only had my arms twisted in a cop hold, the quiet room teacher Anderson like sat me on his lap. I was like turned around, and when I was sitting down, his kneecap grinded against my. I mean, that could have stuff like that could have happened to my brother Kenny, excuse me, my brother Kenny in his school. But the only thing is, he can't talk about it, and I can,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure stuff like that happened to him, behind the scenes that he can't tell us, because if he's gone for like 6 hours, there's always going to be some, psycho that's going to pick on him.
Right. And I think
Which is
what you're bringing up, where you're talking about the way that people handle and approach certain things, that kind of ties back into what it is that I'm saying, that the way I think that the issue that you have is that people, when someone has more visible and more obvious disabilities, people tend to pick up on that, and they tend to sort of adjust and they tend to adapt their way of thinking, and they open up that consideration where they sort of are apprehensive and they approach things in a particular way. When a person is on the higher functioning end of the spectrum, people are a lot less willing to do that. And the issue that I have with the way that our culture and society has responded to what took place in May 2014 and what we see now when it comes to the subculture of incels and a lot of the things that are happening in relation to the autism spectrum and people who have the social struggles and the emotional pain and the experiences that the person who committed this crime in 2014 did, is people, from my experience, I see as being very unempathetic, very demeaning, very aggressive towards people, and very very demonizing towards people who have these experiences. And something that Jimmy said in a video was he was talking about how if you want these things to stop happening, you have to be a friend to people. And he thinks that our society has done the complete opposite of this, and that our society has pushed these people, basically saying that it is right to view people who struggle in this way as being social pariahs, as being outcasts, as being people who do not deserve the respect or the acceptance of our society, when it is in fact those things that are pushing them in this situation to begin with. And what that article was touching on is that people who are on the higher functioning end of the spectrum tend to be people who are involved in potentially some of these criminal behaviors, as opposed to people who are more affected. And that's because I think that those people are people who are most vulnerable to having this kind of internal crisis and this confusion and this pain, where they feel as though they are so close to achieving that social connection and so far away. Something that Eggy has always talked about, and he basically took the words straight out of my head because I've said this about my own life for years, which is Eggy used to say that he felt as though he lived his life behind a layer of glass, as though he lives on the other side of an impenetrable layer of glass that prevents him from fully participating and being involved in life. And I think that that is something that the person who committed this crime experienced a lot, and that's something that I read a lot in his writing. Is he is a person who is surrounded by people who are participating in activities every single day. He is involved in this culture of very affluent, very respectable, very socially prominent people. And despite being someone who is born into that culture and surrounded by it, he is encased in that glass, where because of the nature of who he is as a person, and because of the way that people interpret a person like him, that glass is impenetrable, and he stays on the other side, just just to view and to passively experience these things through observing the lives of other people, but not being able to experience those things for himself. And I think that the thing that's so beautiful about the way that Randy grew up with Kenny and the way that they had this friendship is, I think it's something that people don't show enough respect for people who are willing to genuinely take that time out of their lives to express kindness and compassion and inclusivity to people who struggle in this way. And I think that people, I guess, they find it easier to empathize and to admire that willingness to open themselves up when you see a relationship between someone like Randy and Kenny, because they see Kenny as a person who is in more need of that assistance, who is in more need of that social acceptance. But when you take someone who is less severe, someone who is more ambiguous and more difficult to understand, that willingness to open themselves up to that actually closes and it gets more difficult for them. And that's because people don't know how to be comfortable with that subtlety in communication differences, and that subtlety where it's essentially the Joker quote of the worst part about having a mental illness is that people expect you to behave as though you don't, and that you're held to that expectation of being this fully integrated person, and yet there is something inside of you that they can't see that maybe prevents you from doing that. But
Yeah,
thank you,
definitely.
Randy, for all of your backstory. That's something that really, I think, inspires me a lot.
Oh, you're welcome. And it's just, yeah, yeah. When I went to that to Madison school too, there was this guy named Scott. He was very autistic, probably more than my brother. Yeah, when he was in the quiet room of Mr. Anderson, would take him inside this one locked room. He put him in the cop hold, and he kept saying, "You'd be nice to Dougie now." And Scotty would go and say, he just kept doing it all the time. And the Anderson would just crank on his arms. I'd sit on the chair and sometimes I'd just look back and look away, and but then nobody back then would help me or anything, and oh yeah, Andy Allen, that guy. I know you saw his. I don't know. I mentioned it in another video. Yeah, he saw Anderson do that to me, and well, as far as that guy is concerned, I don't like him at all. So yeah, what he did to those kids, Andy Allen, as far as I'm concerned, and this is just me saying it, since he's sleeping forever, good, because I feel sorry for the poor kids that he's been mean to. Sorry to get off the subject, but
No, I think
just
a lot of your experiences give a lot of perspective as to how much progress we have made and how happy I am that a lot of these things I think they do happen less generally. But I think that the
oh
challenge,
sure, yeah,
as I was saying now, is more so being willingness to extend that empathy towards people who are maybe less severe and are maybe more challenging to read and to understand, because I think the core of what I'm saying is that our society interprets the incel problem as being misogynistic men who can't get laid, and they interpret it as rage and just as something to be mocked, and they aren't willing to empathize or consider the possibility that there is an additional layer here that people aren't reading into. And the thing that I see, and that commonality that I see, and the way that I interpret this problem is I see this as an issue of men who have a social disability, who have had some extremely emotionally traumatic experiences in their life, that are having a crisis about themselves and their value as a person and what it means to have the most significant and most profound and most intimate relationships. And I don't think that people are willing to open their mind up to the possibility of what it actually means to suffer in this way. And I think that you'll find that what they're dealing with is a lot more complex and more tragic and more difficult than people are assuming that it is. It's not just, I don't think that it excuses the vindictiveness or the misogynistic nature of people who are in just I don't think that it excuses the vindictiveness or the misogynistic nature of people who are involved in these communities. I'm not saying that it validates or makes it okay. I'm saying that you have to look at it from the lens of these are men who have a social disability, who have been poorly socially acclimated due to the way that their peers have treated them. And now they find themselves in this position as maladjusted and struggling adults, where instead of being considered and instead of being provided with a certain level of assistance to break them out of that mentality, they are discouraged and they are pushed further into that, and they are just mocked for their inability to achieve these relationships. And I don't think that people realize or understand or recognize how painful and how challenging what it would actually be like. How difficult it would be to be a person, to be a man with a disorder like this, trying to navigate the already extremely isolating and hollow and shallow world of dating in the modern age. And I don't think that people are willing to understand the fact that what these people are dealing with is something that is so much more resolvable and so much more simple to manage to deal with than they realize that it is. That it comes from the most simple human compassionate acts that can heal a person and that can pull a person away from these things. And my main concern is that the men that you see in these communities are going to be labeled as public enemies and are going to be discouraged and pushed further into the darkness and are going to continue committing these crimes because people aren't willing to consider the possibility of how autism has affected this situation and open their minds up to developing a strategy to deal with things like that. So that's just what I think.
Yeah, it's oh boy, let's see. Well, it's okay. Let's see. For my brother, yeah, as far as committing crimes, he when he yeah he didn't like understand like what crime is. Like his mind was like a 3-year-old, but a guy like me, I totally understand what crime is. And say if I say do something real stupid, for example, and you know what, I deserve to be put to sleep forever if I do some serious stuff. I don't want to exactly say it because YouTube might flag us and send us away. You know. Yeah, dang YouTube. Yeah, I mean, I'm for capital punishment myself. That should be in every state, in my opinion. For serious crimes. Because I mean, I read Helter Skelter, reading about Sharon Tate and Susan Atkins. I mean, that was horrible.
The
Yeah,
concern is
yeah,
it's the fact that and the thing that I want to make sure that I reiterate when I talk about this is I'm aware of the fact, and Randy is correct, that the people who commit these kinds of atrocities are fully cognizant and they are fully aware of the immoralness in the things that they do. They are responsible. They are doing things that are evil and they are doing it deliberately. And I don't mean to validate or justify any of those things. But I do feel as though, and possibly maybe it is apprehension with autism advocacy groups where people don't want to acknowledge the indirect connection that exists between these two things, between autism and violence. I think maybe part of it is that. But my concern is that people are overlooking the connection that is there, and they are overlooking how the mistreatment and how the isolation and how the abuse of people on the autism spectrum plays a role in the production of these kinds of crimes and the cultivation of violent culture in association with this and how these things have come together. And over the past 10 years, we've seen how this act in 2014 has created an entire cultural shift, like a renaissance of this way of thinking on the internet, and how it's shaped multiple people that have come after him, and how it's had the ripple effect that I feared that it would have. And my primary concern is that people are not going to be willing to consider or listen to some of some of the experiences of people from this culture. And I want to be a person who is willing to apply my own personal thing and that is positive and that can protect both the people in this community who are committing these crimes from falling in victim to this, as well as the people on the outside. I want to create that mediation and that understanding and that community between these two groups of people. And I know that it's not a simple task, and I know that it's not something that is easy for people to understand. But I do think that it is something that is far easier to handle than people realize that it is. It's something that that comes from the most simplistic levels of humility and kindness and compassion that exists in all of us. I think everyone has the capacity to be empathetic and to be understanding and to open their mind up to what it would truly be like to be a person struggling in the modern age of dating and being on the autism spectrum. And like I said, I know that it doesn't validate or justify the actions and the comments and the things of these people. And I'm willing to acknowledge the fact that some of the things that these incel men experience are due to their own mindset and due to their own actions, and that they are accountable and that they are responsible for themselves. But I think if people were more willing to listen to the experiences of them and take into consideration, I think the thing that people don't realize and don't understand is that the social experiences that you have in your life shape your view of the world and can shape your ability to emotionally empathize and feel included and to interact with other people. And I don't think that people realize how different of a person they would be if they were to have these experiences. And you have to take into consideration the kind of person that you would have become had you had these experiences. It's easy to mock them. It's easy to say, oh, look at these cringy guys that can't get laid, that hate women, and use this political narrative, this political talking point, and then to miss the core issue here, that it's not just that these aren't just men who can't get laid. These are men that are dealing with an extremely challenging and specific painful thing that they are trying to navigate. And that if we just are willing to just consider the possibility that maybe there is some societal accountability here for the existence of this community of people, I think that it could make a world of difference.
For sure, yeah.
And I want people to be more like Randy the Wild Horse. That's what that's what I want people to be more like.
Thank you. It's just, yeah, it's yeah, it's just that and too many people out there, they're angry. They're very angry people, and that's why for myself, well, of course, outside the internet, I mostly I keep to myself unless if I know the person thoroughly. I mean, excuse me. I mean, if I know him real well, first I'll give him like 6 months or something at least, because you just never know what that person is like, right away. Because I've met some strange people in life, very strange. Yeah.
Yes. So old school Dave is saying, I might have this wrong, but your stance is that educating normies might help to curb future events like ERs. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that I don't think that this is a community that people understand, and they have an extremely surface level understanding of what took place, and they are applying political narratives to it that aren't helpful and that are more about personal feminist agendas and different things like that, as opposed to actually developing an understanding of what it is that happened in 2014 and the culture that is built up around this. Because I know I don't mean to say that it's, as I said before, I don't mean to validate or justify or excuse the things that these people do. But I'm a person who has lurked in threads on incel forums, and I've read a lot of autobiographical accounts of things that are written by people on these different forums. And I recognize that they are adults, that they are responsible for the things that they do, and that they have the capacity to improve many aspects of their life independently, and that it isn't all just falling on society. But the thing that I see in this is I see that so much of what put them in the circumstances that they're in to begin with, people aren't born into these kinds of circumstances. And what I see is I see people who have had extremely traumatic experiences that they have never been given something something healing. They've never had those experiences in which the negative expectations that they have about society are proven wrong, where they have these traumatic experiences as children and as teenagers that give them that perception that they are this societal outcast, that they are this enemy of society. And then they never have a dualistic experience in which someone breaks that perception of themselves and pulls them away from that. And something that I remember reading a lot in the manifesto was, I would read there were always these portions of it, these simple portions of it, where he would be taken out with groups of people, in which he would actually, there were a few instances in which he was actually shown and experienced the kindness of other people. And one of the things that he wrote was, it was amazing how these simple little things would change his entire attitude, and how he talks about how the kindness of other people had affected him. And he talks about how he would feel as though he didn't want to commit the crime, as though he would feel as though it inspired him and gave him hope, in this extremely simplistic way, where all it took was just a little bit of empathy to pull him away from that line of thinking for a few seconds, and just take him away from that mindset. And I think that what I'm essentially saying is that the mockery and the demonization of incels, and that's not to say that the things that they do aren't wrong, but this mockery and demonization and politicization of the issue is compounding on the traumas that these people are experiencing, and actually having the opposite effect and validating a lot of the ideas that they have. And it's leading them to believe, yes, I am a societal outcast. Look at how people hate me. Look at how, when I talk about the painful things, the real painful things that I have experienced as a person, look at how people mock those experiences. Look at how they say I deserved it. And that it's compounding on itself, and that it's making things worse. And I think that if people and psychiatrists open their mind to the possibility that there may be a component of social disabilities and things like autism playing a role in this, I think that it's possible that we could see a very positive change in that. That's what I'm saying.
And it's just, I think over the years, I think a lot of people too, those quack doctors that give like certain people these medications too, that screw up the person's brain who commits the crimes like later. Those a lot of those quack doctors are just like out to make money, really. That's what I figure. Just like that one.
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you were saying that's definitely a massive part of it. Is I think that when it comes to how people handle this, I think it's so easy for them to just say this is an example of misogyny in our society, and to not to consider the fact that what I'm essentially trying to say is, and if people want to flay me alive for this, they can. I do have to say, in the threads that I've read on different incel forums, and I'm not saying that this is always correct and that this is always true, when I read about the social experiences of these men and the experiences that they've had at the hands of women, some of the mockery and some of the bullying and some of the painful things and the rejection that they've experienced, when I hear their backstories, I must admit to myself that if I was a man who had these experiences, it would make sense to a certain extent that I would be on some level mistrustful or even angry towards women. Like I can understand why a person would feel like that. And the problem with the medication aspect of it is that it's it's providing this chemical solution to a spiritual and social problem, that improving the quality of life of a person is completely incomparable. It's astronomically better to improve your quality of life than it is to take a pill simply to mask whatever it is that a person is experiencing.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, then yeah, like when I was on Thorazine, I used to in the old days, swing sets. They used to like being on they were like on concrete instead of like on sand these days. Of course, the swing sets are a lot less in height than they were back then. Back then, they're like 20, 30 feet high. I used to jump off swings 10, 15 feet high, land on my knees. I hardly feel it. If I did that now, I'd scream in pain. Yeah, that drug, it'll make you so high you won't even feel pain, when you jump off the swing sets. And yeah, the relationship part of it, that's a good point. Yes, I've had trouble getting dates myself. All through life. I dated one lady for 3.5 years once in the 90s, but other than that, I've always had trouble getting dates. Of course, I'm particular. Well, some of them, of course, I like would date, say, someone that's always picking fights with people all the time. I'd stay away from those ladies, definitely. you know, and yeah, but if I ever say date again in the future, I'm definitely gonna take my time. I'm not gonna like rush and date for the sake of it. That's not me. I mean, I used to kind of be like that, but I'm not like that anymore. No, definitely not.
So what I think Randy
Yeah.
is talking about when he talks about the struggle to find people is something that I think everyone, if they open their heart up, is capable of understanding. And I think sort of what Randy is kind of getting at, and what I would agree with, is that human relationships, and something that incels say that I do agree with. I don't think that they phrase it correctly, maybe per se, but something that I agree with is that I think that sexual and romantic relationships are a basic human emotional and physical need. So I do agree, and I do believe that. Now, I think that perhaps incels express that being a need in a more aggressive way, but I do agree with them that this is something that is fundamental to being human. Human beings have romantic, social connection, and sexual needs and desires. And I think that what people fail to understand, perhaps because these are things that come so easily in their own lives, is I don't think that people understand how unimaginably painful it would be if you had a mental disorder that prevented you from achieving this. And I don't think that people are willing to consider and empathize with or understand how loneliness and how that lack of social connection actually affects a person's quality of life and their outlook and their ability to function as a person. So I agree with the concept that incels talk about, that I do think it is something that fundamental. I don't, they say, I'm not saying that people are entitled to sex per se, but I'm saying that I do think that it is a human need. And I think that the pain that they are experiencing as people who can't achieve this kind of relationship is real. I believe that that pain is real, and that it's something that shouldn't be mocked and that shouldn't be discouraged, because it's a person who is struggling to experience one of the most fundamental and powerful emotional things and needs that a person has.
It's just let's see. Boy. Yeah, let's see if see if a man and a man and a woman gets together. Like I said, they they sh- they should, like I say, take it very slow. Get to know each other. Find common interest. Whatever in public, or be behind the door that's closed and the window that's closed. Things some people do in public, they should close the door and pull the shades down. Because people are just more public and more on what things they do these days. It's just so weird. Sometimes in certain forums they like pass the weirdest pictures and stuff like that. Where years ago, if I say I had a similar like weird picture, I could probably be sent to jail or something. Who knows? Things are just different these days in some ways than they were back then. Back then there's that too. Oh, I wish I could explain things better.
No, I think what you said was really, really good. I think when you were talking about where things are different and that people that's another thing that I've always agreed with about incel ideology is I agree with the incel belief that the sexual revolution has had negative impacts on people in various ways. I think that the sexual revolution and the sexual liberation of women has had a very negative impact on our society, and that it is a contributing factor to the circumstances that incels exist in. So I do believe that the degradation and that the decay of healthy romantic and sexual relationships between men and women is a contributing factor to this. And I think that part of the issue is it's the protection of certain political narratives and the unwillingness to acknowledge the sexual revolution and feminist ideology's role in creating the culture that exists, in creating incel culture, and how those things and how the devaluation of romantic relationships has impacted this, because things aren't as they used to be. People are more promiscuous, they are more hollow, they are more selective in a narcissistic way when it comes to their sexual partners. And people don't pursue relationships, social and emotional relationships, in the way that they are supposed to and the way that they should be. And it is contributing to the experiences of men in these circumstances. And not only is it hurting them, it is hurting the people that are involved in that promiscuous behavior. So I think that what you said was really good, Randy. So
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's just yeah, it's oh god. Oh, oops. Oops, sorry. I'm just thinking. Uh, okay. Yeah, well, the thing I didn't like about the old days, though, is well, especially the old timers from way back. They like totally controlled their ladies. I mean, even the retired guys, they like sit on their chairs. They say, "Hey, Doris, cook me some dinner right now, will you? Hey, hey, Doris, clean the house right now. The house smells really bad. I'll go back in the damn floor, will you?" Yeah, it was a lot different back then than it is now. And and if I was say dating some lady, of course I'd share the housework. I'd share everything. I would, but a lot of yeah, well, hopefully more men and women share the chores. These days. I mean, I hope they do.
I think what you're saying is true. That I think that the incel solution of necessarily reinstating um a very dominant patriarchy isn't necessarily the answer either. And I think that my stance has always been when I say that feminist ideology is a contributing factor to this issue, I'm talking more about the more hedonistic and self-centered aspects of it. So I'm talking about women who want to pursue promiscuous sexual relationships in order to have self gratification and things like that. And my stance has always been that actual misogyny, is wrong and is unhealthy and is immoral and is bad, just not for the reasons that your average Twitter feminist would say. So my goal is that I believe in men and women restoring their relationships with each other on a more spiritual level and in a way that is less political and more interpersonal and more about genuine compassion and relationship building and empathy than it is about political narratives or about it simply achieving the act of sex. So that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. 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 I sure wish my little little brother Kenny understood about dating women, but no, he didn't. Of course, he once kissed a girl and made her blush. That was funny. Anyway, yeah, it's just well.
If it can happen for
Geez, I'm not
Kenny, if
even.
it can happen for Biggs Bigsington, it can happen for anybody. If Kenny can kiss a girl and can make her
Yeah.
blush, then an incel can get a girlfriend. That's a white pill right there.
Yeah, but I'm saying for myself, I'm still gonna, take my time. I just, just got to be careful because, of course, for speaking for myself, only for myself, I like stay out of bars because, like, when I go to bars, one of two things: either people think I look like the type of guy that commits crimes, or they try to pick a fight with me because I'm kind of a tall person, well, medium built, but there's some people think I'm a really big guy, but yeah, I'm kind of a big guy. But and then I just, like I say, I stay out of bars. I'd rather meet the sober people out in the streets because I get along with them better myself. It's up to the individuals, of course. I don't believe in having prohibition again or nothing like that. No, no way. And yeah, at least, oh, boy. Yeah, it's, oh man, I'm just, I almost feel like, oh, wow. I'm boring the chatters away. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I've enjoyed this conversation, and that's what's
Me
important.
too.
And
I just,
I think that the things that you've said and the compassion that you've shown to your brother and the willingness to open your life up to him is something that I think is very beautiful and very inspirational, and it's something that I appreciate about you as a person. And I think
oh, thank
what
you.
you've shown is that the simplest elements of kindness and just the willingness to open yourself up to another person, or just to display empathy and display friendliness on in the simplest way, is capable of breaking a person out of an entire mindset and out of an entire train of thought that they have. And you may be shocked and surprised by how those acts of compassion and kindness can affect a person's life and can change a person's
Yeah.
direction in life and lead them to becoming a better person. And I know that Kenny isn't here to talk about these things or to show you, but I'm sure that he loved you a lot, Randy. And I'm sure that he appreciated all of the things that you did for him.
Yeah, yeah, it's, like I said, it's a shame my mother fell down the stairs doing the laundry. And yeah, it's, yeah, because, yeah, and yeah, it's, oh boy. I don't know what to say. I'm trying my best.
No, it's okay.
Just,
I was thinking
I,
about wrapping up the stream in a couple minutes anyway, because we're at about an hour and 23 minutes. So I'm
yeah,
sorry if this
yeah, just
stream
trying
was
to,
a little bit discombobulated. I meant to sort of plan a little bit better, and a lot of times I'm better at working off of a script than I am just because I can be a bit rambly when I just talk from inside my head. But I hope that the sentiment of what we've talked about here today has made an impact on you. And I know that Randy maybe isn't used to talking about these kinds of things, and maybe he's less knowledgeable than I am, but I hope that his contribution of talking about his relationship with his brother has helped you to understand why compassion is so important, and why and how possible it is, how possible it really is to have a relationship with a person who maybe is on a different level than you socially, a person who maybe doesn't communicate in the same way that you do, and how possible it is to still have meaningful relationships and memories with a person like that. And the thing that I want people to take away from this is the fact that even if you believe yourself to be this extreme social outcast, even if you view yourself as this person who is subhuman, as this person who lives and exists on this other side, on this other side of an impenetrable layer of glass, the way that Eggy does, or the way that our friend Elliot did. I want you to know that there are people out there who dedicate their lives, very caring, very passionate, and very ambitious people who have dedicated themselves to helping people understand the things that you have gone through, and people who want you more than anything else in the world to have a happy and fulfilling life. That there are people who feel for you in ways that you maybe didn't think were possible. Something that happened to me when I was a teenager, and that people who have heard my depression chamber story know about my attempt, my KYS attempt. I'll say it like that. And something that happened to me that has always stuck with me is after I did that, and after I had been in the psych ward for that for a night, and I came back to school, my counselor had confided something in me that I didn't know about at the time that I had done this. And it was something that, coming back to school, really changed my perception of how people viewed me. She told me that there was actually a group of kids, like 2, 3, or 4 kids, that had came to her as a counselor and told her that they were worried about me, and that they wanted someone to reach out to me, and that they weren't really sure how to do it, but there were kids that were looking out for me even if I didn't know about it directly, that there were people who empathized with me, and that they had spoken to my counselor at school because they were worried about me and because they wanted me to be safe. And that was something that, when I found that out in retrospect after that event, opened my mind up to the possibility of the fact that it's not everyone hates you. I know that it feels like that, but there are always people that are capable of empathizing and understanding with the things that you experience. And the presence of God is everywhere in your life, and that there is always someone there who is capable of comforting you, and that there are people who do want you to have good things in life, and people who do care about this issue and who do understand it, and who want you to be a happy, fulfilled person. Even if you don't believe that people are willing to give you that compassion, there are people who are capable of feeling it, and people who are doing the things that they can to make this better for you, despite what you realize and despite what you think. So, Randy, was there anything that you wanted to say before we wrap things up here?
I'd like to thank all you nice, good folks out here for listening to us chat. All our fans are the greatest, of course. Yeah, that's how I feel. I never take the people for granted. Never. You know, never. Because it wasn't for our audience, we wouldn't be here. That's for sure. Yeah. And I thank you, Angel, for having me on your show, of course. Yeah.
No, I was happy to have you on, especially given some of the experiences that you've had. And like I said before, the things that you've done for your brother are things that I think are so gracious and so important and so kind. And I think that you are a person who deserves a lot of credit and appreciation and respect for the things that you do and the things that you've done. I hope that Kenny is resting in peace, and I'm sure that you made an impact on his life, and I'm sure that he loved you a lot, and that God sees you and he sees the things that you've done, Randy, and that he appreciates that for you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I'm going to end the stream by reading 2 pieces of scripture that I think are very important to this. So I'm going to read Romans 8:18, And Romans 8:18 says, I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing to the glory that is to be revealed to us. And what that means is that the suffering and the things that you face are almost always transformative and powerful and capable of bringing you into some beautiful places in life, and that it is always possible to take tragedy and turn it into something special and something powerful. And I do believe that amidst all of the death and all of the pain and all of the things that have happened, that we are capable of finding commonality and understanding in these issues, and that people are capable of redeeming themselves, and that it is possible for us to find ways to stop these tragedies. And the next one I'm going to go take off of my wall because I actually have it on the wall next to me. And it is Ezekiel 36:26. Just so you guys can see it there. So it's Ezekiel 36:26, and this is one of my favorite ones. And it says, I will give you a new heart and place a new spirit within you. And this one is something that really inspires me because I think that it represents the ability that God has to take the most pained and most damaged and hurt and broken people and transform them and give them a new spirit and give them that capacity to see and understand things about themselves and things about other people and things about the value of life that people didn't think that they were capable of understanding. And I think that this quote applies to both the side of people who commit crimes like this and both people who are instigating and mocking and attacking people who have these experiences. Because I think that both the people who commit these crimes are capable of being saved by God and finding redemption and healing as people. And I think the people who have mocked and attacked them are also capable of developing an understanding of the way that these people have suffered and developing empathy. So I think that that's what it is capable of. I think that both sides are capable of understanding each other and are capable of healing and doing what is necessary to make things healthy and safe and restorative. And the last one I'm going to read is Psalm 34:18. That's what it is. It says, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. And something that people have often said about God and the gospel is that God's kingdom is an inverted kingdom, and it's often the people who struggle and are pained the most that are actually the closest to him and that he favors and he loves. And I think that what people who are in the incel community don't understand is that much of the sex, the shallow, hollow, broken, empty sex that people have and the sin that people engage in the modern world leaves them barren and empty and broken. And that you may find that if you are a person who has fewer sexual relationships, but ones that are more significant and more powerful and more meaningful, that you may have a closer relationship with God and have a more fulfilling life than you believe is possible. And that oftentimes the things that we see as being blessings and the things that we see as being markers of happiness and things that give people value are oftentimes not the things that God sees as being valuable and the things that are meaningful in truth. And so I want people to know overall that there are people out there who understand you and that the pain that you're suffering is real and that it is important and that people should care and that they should help you and that they should empathize with you. But that you also have to understand that the people who don't understand you oftentimes are acting out of ignorance and are doing things because they just simply can't process or understand the pain of someone in your circumstance. And that I think that there will come a day where this understanding will take place and where things will be improved. And I want you to know that there are people out there who care about you, and that these acts of violence are not the answer, and that these acts of violence will oftentimes cement and turn you into the monster that you so desperately don't want to be. That I think a lot of times these things are a self-fulfilling prophecy, where you, as a person who has suffered and as a person who has been hated and mocked in your life, if you choose to allow these things to overtake you and define and corrupt you, that you will become the person that you don't want to be, and that it will trick you into giving into that identity, and you will forever be seen this way. And that the true answer is to not give into those demons, and that it is far more rewarding to live as a healthy, empathetic, and happy person than it is to be a person who gives the world what you think it deserves. So I think you and I have said enough, Randy. Thank you so much for coming on this stream again. I'm sorry, this stream. I'm sorry, guys, if it wasn't as interesting or entertaining as you might have liked, but I think that we had some really fun conversations. So thank you, Randy.
I sure did. Yeah, thank you for having me on your show, and thank you, dear good people, for being in the chat too. So,
May Kenny and all of the people affected by the massacre in Isla Vista, may they all rest in peace. So may Kenny, the wild horse, rest in peace. And may all the lives lost in the tragedy in 2014 rest in peace. And God be with us all. Amen.
yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.